Alright, so we have our model here, and what we're going to be going over today is UV texture mapping. So we have our plain model, and the first thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and modify and delete your history. So modify freeze transformations, edit, delete by type history. Now our second point of action here is we're going to right click, assign new material. And I'm just going to click a Lambert, and I'm going to name this checker. And under color, we're going to click the checker box and click the checkered texture. Now what the checkered texture does is it's going to allow us to see where all the warping is happening on the model. And the first thing that we need to do in order to see that is we need to go into the Create UVs and make sure you're under the Polygons tab. And we go to Create UVs Planar Mapping Options box. And then I'm going to go ahead and check out which axis I want to project in. And usually I want to have it project in toward the face of the model. So I see that that's the Z axis, and I'm going to go ahead and project that. Nope. Make sure you select it when you do this. Z axis project. Come on. There we go. So now we can see fairly neat and orderly squares in the front, but as we come around the side, it starts to stretch along the face. Now the way we're going to fix that is by going into our UV texture editor, and we're going to make some cuts along the way, because right now everything's kind of on top of each other. So if we go to Windows, UV texture editor, we're going to pop that open. And right now we can see here are our textures and here's our face. And some of the things I'm going to turn on right away, I'm just going to turn on the toggle shaded UV display. And I'm going to turn on toggle the display of texture borders. Now what that's going to do for me is it's going to allow me to see where I've made my cuts. They're going to be thicker, like this line here, and the reason why that line there is so thick is because it's not attached to anything. Alright, so as we look at the model, we can see that it's kind of purple, and usually what that means is there's two pieces overlapping. What we want in the end in all this is a very light blue color. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and go to edges, and I did that by right clicking on the object. And I'm going to click this edge that goes all the way across the head. And that's going to be my first cut. I'm just going to cut that. So the way I moved these two is I went ahead and I pressed the move UV shell tool, and I just clicked and I moved it to this side. So this here is the back of the head, here's the front of the head. Now as you can see, that doesn't actually affect the model, the actual geometry, it's just affecting the UVs. And the next thing I'm going to do is, since this is red, I want to flip it so that it's blue. Now we're already losing some of that stretchiness that was happening, but it's still happening right here on the edges of the circle. And the way I'm going to fix that is I'm just going to go to edges, and I'm just going to make a slit. Along those areas so it can unfold properly. Excuse me. So there we go. And the way I cut is I'm just going to go ahead and click the scissors tool here, separate the UVs along the selected edges, and there it makes our cuts. And because we have our toggle on, we can see the cuts very easily. Now I'm going to grab my UV shell tool, move UV shell tool, and I'm going to go ahead and click that back head. And then I'm going to click my smooth UV tool. And I'm going to go ahead and click the unfold and drag. And that's laid out my UVs all nice and neat. You can see now that the squares are nice and square. They're not stretched that much. We do have them overlapping a little bit where we've made our cuts. But in general, the UVs are looking pretty nice. So now I have to do the front of the face. The front of the face is a little trickier than the back of the head. And some of the things I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to cut off anything that's excess. So the little area that's right here going inside the eye, I'm going to have to cut that off. I'll probably have to cut off the nose. And I'll probably have to cut off the inside of the mouth. I don't think I'll have to go as far as to cut off the lip, but we'll just play it by ear. So I'm just going to do the eyes first. And I'm going to say that this edge right here is the one I want. I'm going to go ahead and press the scissors tool, use my move UV shell tool, and just move that face to the side. So now I've got the two eyes left over. And I'll cut those and spread them out later, but right now I just want to cut anything that's excess. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and cut that mouth, and I'm going to pop this into one so I can see the actual geometry. And right click edge. And I think looking at this, the edge I want is this one. So that goes all the way around in a nice edge loop if you double click, and I'm going to click the scissors. Use my move UV shell tool and go ahead and move that. And now I have my mouth cut off. And you can see that they're both kind of purpley right now, and that's because we haven't done anything to them yet. Now the last piece I want to cut off is the nose. And this is quite a large nose. So I'm going to look at how the geometry actually is on here and see where the line of the edge moves around. And it looks like right here, that's where it touches the face. So that's probably where I want to start off my loop. So I'm just getting the edge closest to the face all the way around. And I could probably just cut it right there. When you're doing this, the best way to think of it is if you are doing something sewing or how your clothes are made up, where you would make the cuts. I think I have all the edges. No, I'm missing one. right here. And now I can go ahead and cut. And cut my nose out, and I can move my face now to the side, and it leaves my nose behind. Now I'm not done with the nose, because the nose also has nostrils that are going in, and those are little, things that are sticking out right here. So I want to cut those away as well. So I get my edge, and I'm going to go ahead and cut both those nostrils. So when I grab the nose, I can just drag it over, and here's the nostrils left over. So now that I have all the pieces kind of cut in their separate ways, and the face is by itself, all we need to do now is we need to fix the stretching on the sides of the face. Now, the way we do that is similar to the way we did the back of the head, but we want to keep the center of the face intact, because we already did a planar projection going straight on there. So it already is very little warping. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and grab the edges to about there. And if you notice, I'm kind of just stopping where the warping ends. And usually the rule is the fewer cuts you make, the better. But you could always sew back too. Now, if we look at the lip, there is a little purple here. So we might end up having to cut off that bottom lip. In fact, I think that's what we'll have to do. So I'm going to go ahead and look at that bottom lip, because it overhangs quite a bit. And I'm going to think this edge right here is what we want. And I'm just going to lead that straight up to the cut we've already made, to make it a little cleaner. Go ahead and cut. Now I can move that lip out of the way. There we go. So now we have our face, and since we want to keep the front of the face intact for the most part, we're going to be careful about which parts of the UV we actually select. So we right click, go to UV. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select, make sure you're out of the UV shell tool, by the way. I'm going to just select the ones that are just around the face. And when I feel like I have those, I'm just going to go and unfold those areas. And obviously I've missed one of the UVs down here. I'm just going to zoom in and make sure I get that. Okay. Now when I unfold, it should unfold pretty nicely. But you see, it's keeping my face intact while it's doing that. So now we have far less stretching happening. There's a little badness happening here in the cheek area. But the top of the head's looking pretty nice. And the top part of the cheek is looking nice. So it's just the bottom part of the cheek it's really causing us problems. So I'm going to go ahead and grab just a little more of this cheek. When I do it this time. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and unfold. And that did a little bit something, but not quite as much as I wanted. So I'm just going to see what this will do. Yeah, not much. So it's really the mouth here where the UVs are. So I'm going to go ahead and do there. Again, I'm being specific about which areas I'm actually grabbing, which is sometimes harder than it looks. And I'm trying to keep it even at all times. There we go. And I grab my unfold tool. And unfold that area. And that tightens that up. So if you look, I Control Z. So it's really warped. We unfold and tightens up that lip area. So I think that's pretty good. So now for the nose. You see we've got these parts to the nose that either we can cut or we can slice open. It depends on how you want to go about doing this. So I'm looking at the nose and trying to decide how best to cut this without having the cut show tremendously. Now I could just cut the bottom part here, or I could cut the nostrils off. But since this is made like so, I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a cut going this way, and I'm going to make a cut for the nostrils, and then I'll just make slight slices to unfold those. But for this part right here, I can go ahead and grab the line going all the way around. And I can make my cut. Now with that undone, all I need to do is I need to flip it. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to Edit UVs, Unfold Options box. And the way I want to flip it is I want to flip it vertical. So I make sure vertical is selected and I press Apply. And now I can see the bottom of that nose very much like we had it set up. And just for further measure, I'm just going to unfold it and straighten that out a little bit. And that's pretty nice. So now I have the side of the nostrils here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cut. It's already going around this way. I'm just going to continue that cut going in. And cut. I'm going to do the same on this side. And cut. So when I go to unfold, these should unfold out. And just for some extra measure, to make sure that this unfolds nice and neat, I'm just going to make a small incision right here on the nose that I can always sew back together later if it's too much. And there we go. I'm going to see how well that works out. And I'm dragging it away from the other pieces because when I start to unfold it, it's going to get quite large sometimes. So I go to my Edit UVs, Unfold tool, Options box, and looking at it, I think I'm going to go for the horizontal, and I'm going to apply. And already it's in the blue, which is nice. That's what we wanted. But it's not, the squares are not where we want them to be yet. So I'm going to switch from vertical to horizontal and continuously apply that. And that starts to stretch it out as we needed. And you can see that where I made the slit in the nose, it's kind of overlapping. So we might have to go in there and either cut off the tip of the nose or try and individually move those UVs. But it looks like it's separating itself, which is great. So now that it's almost done, I'm going to go ahead and get my unfold tool, and very nice. So we've got this nice clean shape, and I'm going to size that up and see how the warping is. This is just my computer. Sometimes it doesn't want to do a full scale, which drives me a little nuts. So I pop into discrete. Okay. So we can see the squares, and they're actually pretty nice. There's not too many problems going on there. So I think I'm gonna keep this cut for the most part, but I might go into here where they're overlapping and pull those apart. So I'm just gonna go into UV, and I'm in the Move tool, and I'm just gonna pull those a little bit apart. So that they're not overlapping. And there we go, we have a nose cut, and we can set that to the side when we need to use it. Now all the other pieces are done pretty similarly, and it's really just your own best judgment about where you want to cut these things. But if you look at how you want to cut them and how you can do it in very few cuts, that will make your job much easier. So that is it. I will see you in the next lesson.